Ambassador Elena Reyes rubbed her temples, fighting the artificial headache induced by harmony stations lower than Earth gravity. Through the curved transparency of the observation deck, Earth glowed blue and serene, deceptively peaceful from this distance. Admiring your homeworld, Ambassador. The voice belonged to Enxuvka, the Jexidian representative, a willowy being with 6 limbs and iridescent skin that rippled with emotion indicating bioluminescence. Wondering why you all insisted on building this station rather than meeting on Earth, Elena replied, not bothering to hide her irritation. 6 months of diplomatic tap dancing had worn her patience thin. Enxuvka's skin flashed pale yellow. Anxiety. Confederacy protocol for emerging sentience. Nothing personal. Elena turned, deliberately making the movement quick. The Jexidian flinched backward, secondary arms raising in an instinctive defensive posture. Interesting. That made the 7th species representative to display a fear response to sudden human movements. The council is reconvening, Enxuvka said, already retreating toward the doorway. Elena followed, her military gray boots, a deliberate choice over the suggested soft-soled diplomatic footwear, echoing sharply against the polished floor. The sound caused a Kalari diplomat to startle so violently that his epidural sacs inflated, turning bright crimson. The council chamber itself was designed to minimize intimidation, a circle of equal-height podiums surrounding a central projection area. Elena took her position at the human podium, conspicuously alone, while other species had teams of 3 to 5 advisors. We return to Article 7 of the proposed treaty, intoned high speaker Jolath, their gelatinous form undulating inside a containment field. The defensive perimeter provisions. The holographic display showed the solar system with a glowing boundary line extending 2 light-years beyond Pluto's orbit. The Confederacy reiterates the necessity of maintaining this exclusion zone, Jolath continued. No Confederacy vessels shall cross this boundary with hostile intent. And why? Elena interrupted. Would we assume Confederacy vessels would approach with hostile intent in the first place? The chamber fell silent. Elena had broken protocol by speaking out of turn, but she was tired of being managed. It is standard procedure, offered the Thuri delegate, a squat reptilian whose 6th arm kept twitching toward what Elena was certain was a concealed weapon. Funny thing, Elena said, stepping closer to her podium's edge. I've reviewed 17 first contact protocols from various Confederacy members. None mention perimeter boundaries. The Mithrak ambassador, a being that resembled a massive mantis, clicked its mandibles. Humans are a special case. Special how? Elena deliberately slammed her hand on the podium. The reaction was immediate and telling. The Kalari representative's sacs paled to white. The Jexidian skin flashed crimson and black in rapid pulses. Then Three's concealed appendage fully extended, revealing a neural disruptor. Interesting response to a simple gesture, Elena said quietly into the panicked silence. Ambassador Reyes. Jolath's voice had taken on a placating harmonic. The boundary is for mutual protection during this adjustment period. Surely you understand the caution necessary when integrating new species. Elena smiled, a deliberate showing of teeth that caused another ripple of discomfort. Then you won't mind if we add symmetric language. No human vessels shall cross Confederacy home system boundaries with hostile intent. Absolutely not. The objection came from Elder Thisari, breaking his customary silence. The ancient being's translucent skin revealed cybernetic implants pulsing with agitation. That would be impractical. Why? Elena pressed. The treaty stands as written, Jolath declared, ending discussion. We will reconvene tomorrow to address trade protocols. As the delegates filed out, Elena activated the subtle recording device embedded in her diplomatic insignia. She positioned herself near the Mithrak delegation, pretending to study a data tablet. The human female grows suspicious, the Mithrak ambassador whispered to his aide. It changes nothing, the aide responded. They don't know what they are. Let's keep it that way. Elena maintained her neutral expression, but her heart raced. Whatever they were hiding about humanity, she was now certain it wasn't about protecting humans from the galaxy. It was about protecting the galaxy from humans. "Firing solution locked," announced Tactical Officer Rivera, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Torpedoes armed." Lieutenant Commander Sanjay Mehta leaned forward in his command chair, studying the Kalari battle cruiser that loomed on the UEN Intrepid's main view screen. The alien vessel outmassed them 5-1, its spiral-patterned hull bristling with weapon emplacements that could vaporize the human ship in seconds. "Execute attack pattern Delta 7, Sanjay ordered. Rivera hesitated. "Sir, that would take us directly into their firing arc." "Exactly." Sanjay smiled. "They're expecting evasion. We'll charge straight down their throat." The Intrepid surged forward, thrusters flaring as the ship accelerated toward the Kalari cruiser. On the tactical display, simulated weapons lock indicators bloomed across their hull. "They're targeting us," Rivera reported. "Simulated hits in 3, 2, now," Sanjay commanded. The Intrepid rolled 90 degrees and fired all portside thrusters, slipping just beneath the Kalari's primary weapon array. Their torpedoes, carrying sensor packages instead of warheads for this exercise, streaked toward the cruiser's propulsion nexus. "Direct hit," Rivera announced as the simulation registered the impact. "Their engines are disabled." The bridge crew erupted in cheers. Their 6th victory in combat exercises, where human ships should have been hopelessly outmatched. Commander Jovex of the Kalari vessel appeared on the communication screen, a pidgeral sax pale with what Sanjay had come to recognize as distress. "Your maneuver was..." The translator struggled for the right term. "An evolutionary impossibility." Sanjay raised an eyebrow. "How so, Commander?" "No sentient would choose to move toward certain destruction. It violates self-preservation instinct. Sometimes the shortest path through danger is straight ahead." Sanjay replied. "We'll see you at the debriefing." The communication ended, leaving Sanjay troubled. It wasn't the first time an alien commander had reacted this way to standard human tactics. "Watch this segment again," Sanjay instructed Dr. Maya Chen, as they reviewed classified battle footage in her laboratory aboard Harmony Station. The holographic display showed a Jexidian warship facing an Thuri attack vessel. The battle was clinical, mathematical, each ship maneuvering along optimal vectors, firing only when probability of success exceeded 90%. "Now compare it to this." Sanjay switched to footage of a Confederacy joint operation against pirates near Proxima Centauri. The difference was stark. The alien vessels maintained rigid formation until a human destroyer executed a high burn that should have liquefied its crew if not for inertial dampeners. The Confederacy ships broke formation, their movements becoming erratic, almost panicked. "They fight each other with precision," Sanjay observed, "but against us, they make amateur mistakes." Dr. Chen's eyes narrowed. "I have a theory. Help me test it." The lab's medical bay hummed with monitoring equipment as Sanjay sat across from Anstvka, the Jexidian diplomat. Between them lay a simple device, the pain assessor used in medical evaluations. "The test is voluntary," Chen explained. "Place your appendage on the sensor pad. It creates increasing discomfort until you remove it." Anstvka placed a secondary limb on the pad. Within 3 seconds, the Jexidian yanked it away, skin flashing vivid orange. "Maximum pain tolerance registered," noted Chen. "Your turn, Commander." Sanjay placed his hand on the pad. The sensation began as warmth, then pins and needles, escalating to burning pain. He kept his hand steady, breathing through the discomfort. Anstvka's skin shifted to alarmed purple. "You must remove your hand." "Not yet," Sanjay replied through gritted teeth. The monitor showed his pain levels had exceeded the Jexidian's maximum threshold, climbing higher. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he maintained position. When he finally lifted his hand, nearly 15 seconds later, HFY was trembling, secondary limbs wrapped protectively around its torso. "How?" the alien whispered. "Your nervous system should have automatically withdrawn. Humans can override our pain response," Chen explained, recording the results. "We can choose to endure." HFY backed toward the exit. "This is aberrant, unnatural." After the Jexidian fled, Chen turned to Sanjay, eyes wide with realization. "That's it," she whispered. "They physically can't understand us because they're wired differently. Their neural systems have mandatory shutdown protocols that ours don't." Sanjay stared at his reddened palm. "You're saying they're physically incapable of doing what any human soldier considers routine?" "Exactly." Chen's expression was grave. "And that terrifies them." Dr. Maya Chen's laboratory had transformed into a chaotic command center. Holographic brain scans hung in the air like ghostly constellations, neural pathways highlighted in pulsing colors. She'd been awake for 36 hours straight, fueled by synthetic caffeine and the thrill of discovery. Computer, overlay human limbic response with Kalari equivalent during simulated mortal threat. The display shifted, showing two brain models side by side. The human brain flickered with activity across multiple regions, the amygdala triggering fear, but the prefrontal cortex simultaneously processing override commands, weighing options, calculating risks. The Kalari brain was different. When threat levels reached a certain threshold, entire neural regions simply shut down, an evolutionary circuit breaker designed to force retreat. Voice memo. Day 12 of comparative neurology study. Confirmed in all 17 Confederacy species, neural inhibitor pathways activate automatically under conditions humans routinely override. It's not cultural, it's biological. The door hissed open, admitting Sanjay with 2 steaming cups. "You look terrible," he observed, handing her one. "Thanks," she replied dryly, inhaling the aroma of real coffee. A luxury on Harmony Station. "But I found something incredible." She gestured toward a new display. Video footage of ancient humans hunting across African plains, persistence hunting that continued for hours until prey collapsed from exhaustion. "The Confederacy has been studying us since before we discovered fire," she explained. "They classified these observations as threat assessments." The display changed to a genetic analysis. "I've isolated what I'm calling the Hunter's gene complex. 27 genetic markers unique to humans. They govern everything from pain tolerance to psychological determination." Sanjay studied the data. "This presentation tomorrow could end my career or make it," Chen finished. "But the Confederacy needs to understand what they're really afraid of." The Xenobiology conference hall fell silent as Chen displayed the neural comparison data. She'd expected skepticism, even dismissal, but not the wave of visible discomfort that rippled through the alien attendees. In conclusion, Chen stated firmly, humanity's neural architecture allows for conscious override of self-preservation instincts in service of future goals. This capacity. A commotion interrupted her as a Jexidian researcher lurched to his feet and fled the room. Murmurs spread through the audience. "Perhaps we should adjourn," suggested the Mithrek moderator, mandibles clicking nervously. Chen packed her equipment quickly, then followed the path the Jexidian had taken. She found him in a private research pod, surrounded by historical displays far older than anything she'd been granted access to. "You're not a xenobiologist," she said from the doorway. The Jexidian's skin rippled with resigned blue patterns. "No, Dr. Chen. I am Archivist Texanil, Historical Preservation Division. You recognize something in my presentation." Texanil gestured her inside, then activated privacy protocols. The displays shifted to show primitive humans tracking prey across savannas, persistence hunting that continued for hours. "These observations were made 20,000 of your years ago," Texanil explained, voice soft. "The Confederacy has been watching Earth since before your species built permanent settlements." "Why?" Because you were categorized as an evolutionary anomaly. He brought up new images, humans continuing to fight despite grievous wounds, enduring extreme conditions, sacrificing themselves for others. No other sentient species evolved as pursuit predators with communal violence capacity. Chen's eyes widened. What do you mean? The Vkilari evolved from herd herbivores, Jexidians from canopy omnivores, Mithrak from solitary ambush predators. All developed intelligence as defense mechanisms. Texinil's skin darkened. Only humans combined pack hunting with the ability to ignore immediate pain, delay gratification, and experience bloodlust. That's why they fear us, Chen whispered. Not because of what we've done, but because of what you are. Texinil finished. Your capacity to conceptualize your prey's breaking point, to push beyond biological limitations. These traits terrify species whose neural architecture makes such behaviors impossible. He transferred a data crystal to her. The Confederacy's true classification of your species. I risk everything by sharing this. Chen scanned the file, her stomach tightening. Species, human, Terra. Classification, persistence predator. Threat category, alpha. Containment protocol, active. Containment protocol, she echoed, finally understanding the boundary line. They're not protecting us from them. No, Texinil agreed, skin pulsing with fear patterns. They're protecting the galaxy from you. Captain Amara Okafor had never expected to use her combat training at a research outpost. The 30 scientists and support staff at Proxima Station, herself included, were academics, not soldiers. Their modest defensive capabilities were supposed to be a formality, not a necessity. Yet here she stood in the station's command center, watching as 12 unidentified vessels dropped out of FTL, their hull configurations unlike any Confederacy design. All personnel to emergency stations, she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Initiate lockdown protocol Epsilon. Dr. Rodriguez, the station's lead microbiologist, looked up from his console. Those aren't Confederacy ships. No, Amara agreed grimly. And they're not answering hails. The main display showed the approaching vessels, angular, asymmetrical craft bristling with what could only be weapons. Their trajectory left no doubt about their intentions. Confederacy Emergency Channel reports them as Drokathy. Communications Officer Patel announced. Religious extremist faction. They'd gone rogue from their government. Rodriguez paled. Drokathy believe in purity of evolution. They consider predator species abominations. Well, they're about to meet 30 abominations who don't want to die. Amara replied, pulling up the station's defensive schematics. Patel, send our distress beacon on all frequencies. Everyone else, we need to make this station a fortress. The first boarding party breached airlock 7 18 minutes later. The station's minimal shields had collapsed under concentrated fire, and their defensive weaponry had managed to disable only one enemy vessel. Amara watched through security feeds as the Drokathy entered, tall, skeletal beings with elongated craniums and 4 arms, each carrying energy weapons. Their movements were precise, coordinated, ruthlessly efficient. They're heading for the primary lab section, Rodriguez observed. That's where most of our people are barricaded. Amara assessed their options with cold clarity. 30 researchers against what appeared to be hundreds of trained Drokathy soldiers. No reinforcements for at least 9 hours. We can't win conventionally, she stated. So we don't fight conventionally. She opened the station-wide channel. All personnel, this is Captain Okafor. We are implementing unconventional defense strategy Omega. Access your emergency tablets for assignments. Remember your training. There was no actual strategy Omega in any protocol manual, but every human understood the implicit message. Anything goes. The second Drokathy boarding party found the corridors eerily empty. They advanced cautiously toward the research laboratories, 4-fingered hands gripping weapons designed to kill with minimal suffering. A mercy they believed undeserved by predator species, but demanded by their faith. They didn't expect the ceiling panels to crash down on them, nor the human woman who dropped into their midst with a fire extinguisher repurposed as a bludgeon. 3 Drokathi fell before they could aim their weapons. The 4th managed to fire, catching Dr. Katri in the shoulder. The plasma bolt should have sent her into shock, triggered neural shutdown. Instead, she swung the extinguisher into the Drokathi's elongated skull with her uninjured arm. Similar scenes unfolded throughout the station. Humans used ventilation shafts to outflank the invaders. They reprogrammed maintenance droids into mobile traps. 2 geneticists with recreational rock climbing experience used their equipment to suspend themselves above doorways, dropping onto unsuspecting Drokathi. In the primary laboratory, Rodriguez watched the security feeds with grim satisfaction. When the largest Drokathi force converged on his position, he activated his transmitter. For the record, he spoke to the station's AI. "This is Contingency Gamma." He looked at the samples around him. Experimental extremophile bacteria from Proxima Oceans, and broke their containment seals. Then he activated the emergency decompression sequence for that section. When the Drokathi breached the laboratory doors, explosive decompression sent both humans and aliens into the corridor, along with a cloud of rapidly mutating bacteria that began consuming the Drokathi's environment suits. 9 hours later, when the UEN Dauntless arrived in response to the distress call, they found 17 surviving humans and over 200 dead Drokathi. The station's AI played Captain Okafor's final recorded order before she lost consciousness from blood loss defending the medical bay. Make them remember why predators are feared. The footage of Proxima Station's defense was classified immediately, but data packets leaked across Confederacy networks within days. The response was immediate: civilian evacuations from systems bordering human space, military vessels repositioning, diplomatic channels going silent. The humans had been contained for a reason. Now everyone knew why. Ambassador Elena Reyes stormed through Harmony Station's diplomatic quarter, a data tablet clutched in one hand. Security drones tracked her movement, weapon systems visibly powered but not targeting. The station's atmosphere had changed since Proxima. Tense, watchful, as if expecting an outbreak of human violence at any moment. She reached the Confederacy Council chamber just as emergency containment protocols activated, sealing the room. Perfect timing. "This session is closed-toe," began a Mithrek security officer. Elena slammed her diplomatic credentials against the scanner. Article 17, Paragraph 4 of the Diplomatic Accords. "I have the right to attend any session discussing human interests." She fixed the insectoid being with a stare. "And I believe this qualifies." The doors reluctantly parted. Inside, the council was in chaos. Delegates shouting over each other in multiple languages, while the emergency projection showed military vessels repositioning across 3 sectors. Elena strode to the central table and threw down printouts of the Proxima footage that had leaked across Confederacy networks. The room fell silent as images scattered across the polished surface. Human researchers fighting with improvised weapons, continuing despite injuries, sacrificing themselves for tactical advantage. "Explain this classification," she demanded, holding up her tablet displaying the file Dr. Chen had discovered. "Human. Persistence predator. Threat category. Alpha. Containment protocol. Active." No one spoke. Council members exchanged glances, secondary appendages twitching with anxiety signals. Finally, Elder Thiseri, the oldest living member of the founding species, activated his mobility platform. The ancient being glided forward, translucent skin revealing atrophied organs maintained by cybernetic implants. He'd been present at first contact with 17 species. His word was effectively law. "You were never meant to discover this." Thiseri's voice was a synthetic approximation of speech, his original vocal organs long since replaced. "That's not an explanation," Elena insisted. Thiseri gestured with a trembling appendage. The chamber's central holographic display activated, showing prehistoric Earth. Humans tracking animals across savannas, continuing for days until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. Early observation of your world, he explained, long before your species developed written language. The images shifted, showing tribal warfare, Bronze Age battles, warriors continuing to fight despite wounds. Your evolutionary path is unique among all known intelligent species, Thiseri continued. The V'Kaleri evolved from herd herbivores, the Jexidians from arboreal omnivores, my own kind from filter-feeding marine collective organisms, all developed intelligence as defense mechanisms against predators. Elena watched the progression of human warfare across millennia. And humans, apex predators who became more effective by developing intelligence, Thiseri replied. Only humans evolved the neural architecture that allows conscious override of self-preservation instincts. Only humans developed abstract planning capacity alongside pack-hunting behaviors. The display shifted to modern warfare. Soldiers advancing under fire, medics treating wounded under impossible conditions, the incredible damage human bodies could sustain while still functioning. When we discovered Earth, we recognized the pattern immediately. Thiseri's synthetic voice carried a hint of what might have been dread. A species with your neural capabilities, your ability to conceptualize enemy breaking points, your capacity for violence, if allowed to develop advanced technology without proper observation. The hologram changed again, displaying classified simulations of human expansion without the containment boundary. The images were disturbing even to Elena. Human military doctrine, applied across stellar distances, ruthless efficiency in resource acquisition, implacable advance against resistance. The boundary was never about protecting you, Thiseri concluded, but protecting us from what you could become. Before Elena could respond, alarms blared across the chamber. The strategic display shifted to the outer rim of Confederacy space, where unknown vessels had just destroyed 3 monitoring outposts. Multiple contacts, unknown configuration, reported the V'Kaleri Defense Coordinator, epidural sacs flaring with stress indicators. They're not responding to identification requests. The tactical display showed the unknown vessels systematically targeting Confederacy defensive positions. Their attack pattern was methodical, relentless, each strike precisely calculated to minimize their losses while maximizing damage. That's impossible, whispered a Jexidian analyst, skin flashing distress patterns. They're sustaining casualties that would trigger automatic retreat protocols in any known species. Elena studied the display, recognizing the tactical doctrine immediately. They're fighting like us, she said quietly, like humans. Elder Thiseri's cybernetic eyes fixed on her. We feared what you might become, the ancient being said. Now we face something worse. Admiral Sharix of the V'Kaleri Defense Force stood rigidly before the Emergency War Council, his epidural sacs mottled gray with exhaustion. 3 days without neural recovery cycles had left him functioning on stimulants and biological reserves that his species was never meant to tap. The Voidborn have taken 7 more systems, he reported, manipulating the tactical display to show the advancing front. Conventional defense strategies have proven ineffective. The assembled military leaders from 6 Confederacy species studied the grim data. None spoke. None needed to. The casualty figures spoke volumes. Sharix activated a recording from the Battle of Ixion Delta. The footage showed Voidborn shock troops continuing their advance through a defensive kill zone. The front ranks fell to concentrated fire, yet those behind simply climbed over their fallen comrades, pressing forward without hesitation. No retreat response, observed a Jexidian commander, skin flashing disturbed yellow. No preservation protocol activation. Their neural architecture must be fundamentally different, added a Mithrek strategist. They're ignoring casualty thresholds that would trigger automatic withdrawal in any Confederacy species. Sharix's gaze drifted to the human representatives, who had been reluctantly invited to the briefing. Lieutenant Commander Sanjay Mehta and Ambassador Reyes. They fight like... He stopped, mandibles clicking in discomfort. Sanjay stepped forward, completing the thought. They fight like us. The chamber fell silent. For centuries, the Confederacy had feared human expansion. Now they faced an enemy that embodied those same fears, but without human restraint. The Voidborn employ psychological warfare. Orcs continued, displaying footage of captured Confederacy worlds. They deliberately leave survivors to spread terror. They display the bodies of the defeated. He struggled with the concept. They appear to derive satisfaction from inflicting suffering. Sadism. Alina supplied the term, taking pleasure in others' pain. The Confederacy representatives recoiled at the concept, an evolutionary impossibility in species where neural shutdown occurred before such behavior could develop. How do we defeat an enemy that doesn't retreat? Asked the Jexidian commander. All eyes turned to the humans. The United Nations Security Council chamber in Geneva buzzed with tense energy as Admiral Helena Vasquez presented the classified Confederacy data. Earth's military and political leadership watched in growing concern as the scale of the Voidborn threat became clear. They're requesting our assistance, Vasquez concluded. After centuries of containment, they need our help. Our assistance or our expertise in killing? Asked the British representative dryly. Both, Vasquez replied without pretense. The Voidborn employ human-like tactics with technology far beyond our capabilities. They're pursuit predators, like us, but without our ethical restraints. The room's display showed Voidborn forces systematically dismantling Confederacy defenses. Acceptable casualty rates of 70%. Tactical sacrifices that no Confederacy commander would consider. Psychological operations designed to exploit the automatic neural shutdown responses of their opponents. They're beating the Confederacy because they understand what we've always known. Vasquez continued. That determination often trumps technology. That fear can be weaponized. That sometimes victory requires sacrifice. The Chinese representative leaned forward. And if we help, what guarantee do we have that the Confederacy won't simply reinstate their containment once the threat is eliminated? None, Vasquez admitted. But there's something you need to see. She displayed the final intelligence assessment. Voidborn vessels altering course to investigate the Sol system boundary, probing humanity's defenses. They recognize us as their primary threat, she explained. Whether we fight now alongside the Confederacy or later alone, the Voidborn are coming for Earth. The UN Secretary-General studied the projections. What do you propose, Admiral? Vasquez's expression hardened. Operation Human Shield, but not as a defensive measure. We take the fight to them, using what the Confederacy has always feared about us as our primary weapon. And the Confederacy leadership, will they accept human military doctrine? Asked the Russian delegate. The main screen activated, showing Elder Thiseri's artificial face. The ancient being had been listening to the entire conversation. You wanted a line between us, Vasquez addressed him. Well, now we're offering to cross it, to save you. Thiseri's synthetic voice carried across continents and the void of space. The alternative is extinction. All ships, execute Formation Lambda. Admiral Helena Vasquez's command cut through the tense silence of the UEN Artemis Bridge. Deploy hunter-killer groups as planned. The tactical display showed her unorthodox battle plan unfolding. Human vessels intermingled with Confederacy ships in formations that had initially horrified their alien allies. The integrated fleet approached the Rigel system, where Voidborn forces had established their primary forward base. Voidborn vessels responding, reported Lieutenant Park from Tactical. They're moving to engage our forward elements. Vasquez nodded calmly. The Voidborn had identified the apparent vulnerability in her formation, a deliberate weakness. The trap was set. Commodore Angselith, she addressed the Jexidian officer serving as her second-in-command, signal Group Theta, to initiate distress protocols. The Jexidian's skin rippled with alarm patterns. Admiral, Group Theta includes 4 of our most advanced destroyers and 600 personnel. I'm aware of the numbers, Commodore. They'll be outnumbered 3-1. Anxlith protested, secondary limbs twitching. Casualty projections exceed 70%. And they've all volunteered. Vasquez replied evenly. The crews understand the strategic necessity. Anxlith's skin shifted to the deep blue of moral distress. Using soldiers as bait, it violates every ethical protocol of Confederacy warfare. Vasquez stepped closer, lowering her voice, which is precisely why the Voidborn won't expect it. She gestured to the central display. Look at their formation. They recognize our tactics because they think like us. They're already committing their capital ships to exploit what they perceive as our mistake. The Jexidians stared at the unfolding battle, comprehension dawning. You're sacrificing Group Theta to draw their main force into position for our flanking attack. I'm giving Group Theta the opportunity to make their potential deaths meaningful, Vasquez corrected. There's a difference. Before Anxlith could respond, Vasquez opened a private channel to her ready room. Commander Chen, bring in our guest. When Anxlith entered the Admiral's ready room after his duty shift, he found Vasquez standing before a strange holographic display, not tactical data, but images of stone structures and metal tablets. These are from Earth, she explained, gesturing to the monuments. War memorials. This one commemorates soldiers who fell at Normandy Beach. This one honors those lost at Thermopylae. This records the names of those who died in orbit around Mars during the colony crisis. Anxlith's translator struggled with the concept. You celebrate death. We honor sacrifice by ensuring it has meaning, Vasquez corrected. Every human culture throughout history has created memorials to those who gave their lives in service to others. She activated another display, the tactical situation unfolding at Rigel. Group Theta had engaged the Voidborn forces, suffering heavy losses, but drawing the enemy capital ships precisely where Vasquez wanted them. In 30 minutes, I will give the order that sends strike groups Omega and Epsilon into a position of extreme vulnerability, she explained. Hundreds will die to create an opening that may never come. I will live with those deaths for the rest of my life. She met the aliens' compound eyes directly. But I'll ensure they're remembered, that their sacrifice has purpose. That's something the Voidborn don't understand. The true power of human predatory nature isn't our capacity for violence, but our ability to channel sacrifice towards something greater than individual survival. Anxlith's skin shifted to thoughtful purple. The Confederacy has always feared your species would become like the Voidborn. The difference is choice, Vasquez replied. We can be ruthless when necessary, but we've evolved past mere survival imperatives. We fight not just to live, but for how we wish to live. The Battle of Rigel Prime reached its climax as Vasquez's controversial strategy unfolded. The Voidborn commanders, recognizing human tactical patterns, committed their reserves to exploit what they perceived as a critical vulnerability. They didn't expect the modified Parthian retreat, an ancient human tactic now executed with interstellar warships. The seemingly vulnerable human vessels suddenly reversed thrust, while concealed Confederacy heavy cruisers emerged from Rigel's asteroid field, catching the Voidborn fleet in a devastating crossfire. On the Artemis Bridge, Vasquez watched the enemy formation splinter. Now we show them what makes humans truly dangerous, she said quietly. All ships execute final protocol. The human vessels transmitted a precisely engineered psychoacoustic signal, one designed specifically to trigger the instinctive fear responses that even the Voidborn couldn't fully suppress. The effect was immediate. For the first time since the conflict began, Voidborn ships broke formation, retreating in disarray. Anxlith stared at the tactical display in astonishment. How did you know that would work? Because they're predators like us, Vasquez explained. But their evolution lacked something crucial that shaped humanity. The need to cooperate, to trust others despite our violent capabilities. Lone predators can be terrifying, but they're ultimately predictable. She watched as the remaining Voidborn vessels flood the Rigel system. We studied their tactics and realized their limitation. They understand cruelty, but not compassion. They grasped sacrifice as a concept, but only when forced upon others. They've never experienced what humans call righteous fury, the collective strength that comes when individuals choose to stand together. Throughout Confederacy space, the Battle of Rigel Prime became an immediate legend, the day human predatory ingenuity, tempered by what aliens had always considered contradictory emotional weaknesses, had accomplished what superior technology could not. Intercepted transmission, Admiral. Lieutenant Park reported, her voice betraying rare excitement. Origin. Voidborne command vessel. Our cryptography division just decrypted it. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Rigel Prime. The Voidborne retreat had become a full-scale withdrawal, their forces abandoning conquered territories faster than Confederacy and human vessels could reclaim them. Admiral Vasquez looked up from the after-action reports that had consumed her waking hours. Display content. The bridge officers gathered as the main screen displayed the translated message. Communications between Voidborne fleet commanders discussing the new defensive protocol implemented by their high command. They're establishing their own containment boundary, Park explained, highlighting key sections. Effectively a quarantine zone between their territory and Confederacy space. Vasquez leaned forward, studying the details. This isn't about the Confederacy, she realized. Look at the specified coordinates. They're specifically avoiding human-controlled systems. The intelligence was unambiguous. The Voidborne had reviewed captured footage of human combat psychology and tactical doctrine. Their conclusion: humans represented an unacceptable existential threat, one that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. They fear us, Enxlith observed, skin rippling with surprised blue patterns. Not our technology, not our weapons. They fear what humans are. Vasquez allowed herself a thin smile. Ironic, isn't it? The Confederacy contained us for the same reason. The Grand Chamber of Harmony Station had been reconfigured for the historic treaty signing, where once the Confederacy Council had deliberated in isolation. Now representatives from 27 species gathered in concentric rings, with the human delegation prominently positioned in the inner circle. Elder Thisseri, supported by his medical attendants, addressed the assembly with his synthetic voice. Today marks the formal dissolution of the Sol defensive perimeter, he announced. The boundary that has separated humanity from the greater Confederacy will be replaced by a mutual defense pact, recognizing Earth and its colonies as full members of our galactic community. Ambassador Elena Reyes stepped forward to join the elder at the ceremonial signing table. Behind her stood Admiral Vasquez, Lieutenant Commander Meta, Dr. Chen, and Captain Okafor, the reluctant heroes who had transformed humanity's relationship with the stars. The document before you, continued Thisseri, acknowledges our historical misunderstanding of human evolutionary psychology. Where we once saw only the predator, we failed to recognize the protector. As the treaty was formally displayed, a particular clause drew Elena's attention. The Confederacy formally recognizes that humanity's unique neural architecture, once designated as threat indicators, represents not merely capacity for aggression, but capacity for self-sacrifice, cooperation, and defense of shared principles that transcend individual survival. Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before signing her name to the document that would forever change humanity's place in the cosmos. Later, in the observation deck where her journey had begun, Elena stood with Elder Thisseri, watching a newly commissioned Confederacy vessel with a human captain depart the station. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," Elena said. During the worst of the Voidborne advance, when defeat seemed inevitable, why trust humans? We could have used the chaos to expand our own territory, establish dominance while the Confederacy was vulnerable. Thisseri's artificial eyes studied her, because in all our observation of Earth, across thousands of years, we discovered one consistent truth about your species. Your capacity for violence is matched only by your capacity for protection. The ancient being gestured toward the stars. The Voidborne embody what happens when predatory evolution lacks compassion. But humans demonstrated what our analysts could never properly quantify: that your most dangerous evolutionary traits become your greatest strengths when directed toward defending others. Elena watched as mixed crews of humans and aliens worked seamlessly together on the station's exterior, repairing battle damage. "We protected ourselves from you," Thiseri continued, never realizing that what we feared most about your species would become our greatest salvation. "The boundary between us was always imaginary," Elena replied, "created by fear rather than understanding." A Vakileri diplomat approached, no longer flinching in her presence, and handed Elena a data tablet containing the final intelligence report on voidborn activities. The enemy had established their own containment perimeter, a buffer zone between their territory and human-controlled space. "They fear us enough to contain themselves," Elena observed. Thiseri's synthetic voice carried a hint of what might have been humor. "Perhaps they recognize what we finally learned, that there's only one line humans never cross." Elena nodded, completing the thought. "Abandoning those under our protection." In the void beyond the station, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the realignment of power that had just transpired. Humanity had been feared for its predatory nature, then valued for its protective instincts. The same evolutionary heritage, viewed through different lenses. The boundary line was gone. A new era had begun.